Andrea, you're muted.
She wasn't. No, she is now, yeah. How'd that happen? We all got muted. She wasn't muted. Somebody made a mistake.
Good morning. Welcome to Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship. I'm Reverend Paul Beckel. All who come to BUF in the spirit of goodwill are welcome. I want to make a special welcome today to our visitors. If you are new and have any questions about BUF or Unitarian Universalism, please send me an email, paul@buf.org or minister@buf.org. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religious movement over 2 centuries old, founded on our ancestors' commitments to freedom, conscience, and the equality of all people. These ideals are not always easy to put into practice, but through mutual support and respect for one another's journeys, we strive to live lives of integrity, become true to ourselves, and become beloved community. Becoming is the theme we've been reflecting on throughout the month of April. It's hard to think of a more profound story of becoming than the one you'll hear today from Erika Shepard, who will tell us about her journey to this point in her life as a trans woman. Thank you, Erika, and thank you all for being here to love and support one another.
Good morning. I'm Carrie Koehnline, a longtime member of this fellowship, and I'll be your celebrant this morning. In a moment, I'll be lighting a chalice here in my home, and I invite you to light a chalice in yours as we come together in community. But first, as we begin this service on transformations and the process of becoming, here are some opening words from the poet David White. Threshold. Be taught now among the trees and the rocks, how the discarded is woven into shelter. Learn the way things hidden and unspoken slowly proclaim their voice in the world. Find that far inward symmetry to all outward appearances. Apprentice yourself to yourself. Begin to welcome back all you sent away. Be a new annunciation. Find the words you always wanted to say and stand at the door of the day and be hospitable to the stranger in you. Now, as we light our chalice, we dedicate it to the process of becoming more and more fully who we were always meant to be. Now, please join me in saying our covenant. The words will be on your screen. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service gives it life. Celebrating our diversity and joined by a quest for truth, we work for peace and honor all creation. This is our covenant.
Good morning, everyone. Let's sing together.
Spirit of life, come. Good morning. I'm Laura Lee Carboni. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'd like to talk about the intersectionality of race and gender. There is no pride for some of us without liberation for all of us. Centering the lives of trans and gender diverse BIPOC is the only way to achieve our collective liberation. At the core of this belief lies our commitments to racial and economic justice, intersectionality, accessibility, inclusion, and sex positivity. The work is about reducing state harm and violence, increasing sustainable employment, and engaging in advocacy and education work with service providers to create safer, affirming, and affordable care for all trans and gender diverse people. Achieving these goals is not possible without an explicit anti-racism lens that closely examines and resists anti-Blackness and uplifts Indigenous sovereignty. We recognize that in order to move the trans community toward liberation, we must address the violence and oppression that targets trans BIPOC, and especially Black trans women and femmes. If we can solve these injustices for trans BIPOC, it will solve things for all. Because our work must dream of a world where all trans people have what is needed to survive and thrive. We need to explicitly center the dismantling of anti-Blackness in all of our work. Defunding police, prisons, and other structures that uphold racism and colonial systems of power, and leveraging our power and resources to topple the structures that uphold white supremacy and lead to grave disparities and even death, is paramount. The numbers are in. Every issue and experience with transphobia is dramatically exacerbated by the additional intersections of racism and anti-Blackness. These experiences are compounded further for those with additional intersections, including queer and disabled people, women, immigrants, and sex workers, among others. The 2015 U.S. Trans Survey highlights these disparities. Black, trans, and gender diverse respondents reported experiencing homelessness, poverty, violence, and mental health distress at significantly higher rates than white trans people and cisgender Black communities nationwide. They also experienced significantly higher rates of police harassment, violence, arrest, and incarceration among Black respondents, with Black trans women being 4 times more likely to be incarcerated than trans people generally. Since the COVID pandemic, it has only gotten worse for our beloved communities. Lack of secure and affordable housing, policing and the prison industrial complex, medical racism and healthcare access issues, and increasing gentrification and generational wealth disparities, among other issues, contribute to the systemic violence that trans and gender diverse BIPOC communities face. Systemic and structural racism and oppression exist alongside interpersonal violence, and both severely impact BIPOC, especially women. In 2020, 44 trans people were murdered in the US, an all-time high, the majority of whom were Black and brown trans women. I mourn these valuable lives lost and celebrate the trans and gender diverse communities across Washington state that tenaciously survive and fight for collective liberation from these structures that seek to destroy. Prioritizing and committing to anti-racism and resisting anti-Blackness requires thoughtfulness, intention, resources, transparency, and accountability. This is why we need an expansive anti-racism action plan to infuse and prioritize anti-racism throughout our organization and all of our programming. This is what the work of Beloved Community is all about.
Thank you, Laura Lee. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for this morning. Erika Shepard is a retired geologist and longtime member of BUF. She's been the treasurer of the Humanitas Ministry since it began in late 2013, which, thanks to your support, is still going strong. Today, she'll speak to us about her journey of becoming Erika, which begins, as she says, in the wastelands of Missouri in the 1950s, to her eventually finding refuge in the Shangri-La of Bellingham in 1996. The journey is described in her self-published memoir titled Transformations, From Field Boots to Sensible Heels. She told me that she finally released it in August 2020 after fiddling with it for about 10 years. It's available at Village Books and on Amazon. Welcome, Erika.
Thank you, Carrie. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending today. What I plan to do is read some passages from my memoir to illustrate my own journey of becoming. Although my path has some unique aspects, the overall story is one of discovery and change. A story I think that fits all of us to one degree or another, and one that I hope will connect with you and your own personal experiences. But first, some backstory. It's Kansas City, Missouri, 1956, and I am 8 years old. My parents were divorced a year earlier, and one of my father's parting shots as he exited the family was to complain about his sissy son. On a gray, rainy day in November, I am across the street at Karen's house playing board games with her on her living room floor. We've been doing that for several hours and are getting bored. Trying to think of something else to do, Karen suddenly popped up with an idea. Let's play dress up. We've got some clothes in the basement for Goodwill that we can use. Not too sure of what she had in mind, I followed her to the basement. We can pretend like we just met and are having tea, she said. We'll both be women. With that, she stood up and began rummaging through the clothes box. Here it is. She straightened up, holding in her hands a wrinkled cotton dress in a style that reminded me of one my mom wore. A deep royal blue with white buttons down the front and short sleeves. It came with a matching cloth belt. It's a shirt dress, she explained. Here, take off your t-shirt and roll up your jeans. You put it on over your head. Okay. Half-heartedly, I slipped off my t-shirt and rolled up the legs of my jeans as instructed. As I pulled the dress over my shoulders, Karen stepped up and adjusted it, helping me with the buttons. She then turned to the box looking for something for herself. I sat down on the carpet, cross-legged, knees poking out from under the dress. No, she said, you've got it wrong. Sit like this. She adjusted both her legs to one side, then arranged her skirt over them, spreading it as much as possible. It felt awkward, but I did as she showed me. She settled into position, then extended her hand toward me. Hello, my name is Karen. What's yours? I hesitated for a moment, then picked the first name that occurred to me. My name is Patricia, I replied. There was a cute girl in my class by that name. Pleased to meet you, she said. Would you like some tea? Yeah. Yes, thank you. I realized my heart was pounding. Why? I asked myself. But I knew why. I very well knew why. After pouring invisible tea, Karen began, weaving a story of her imaginary husband and their perfect lives. He, like her father, was an engineer. They met at college, she said, and now lived in a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a lovely neighborhood with trees and parks. She wove a fairy tale story of a balanced, happy household with 2 parents who loved their child and who hoped to someday add a little brother to the family. It was a foreign land to me, lovely and quite unreal. Now it's your turn, Patricia. Tell me about yourself, she said, sitting back. I took a deep breath and jumped over the cliff. Well, I am 27 years old too. I've got pretty blonde hair and I don't have any kids because my husband died in a terrible accident. I work in a jewelry store, but I'm the manager because I know a lot about rocks and minerals. No, you're not. Girls can't be managers. Yes, I can, I replied, indignant, because I am one and it's my story. Oh, all right, she replied. I started again, and in a lightning flash, the realization struck me. It was so simple, so easy. I could paint my life with words. I could be anyone I wanted, and I wanted to be a girl. Time slowed as my surroundings suddenly came into focus. A clarity in the dimness of that dark basement. A faintly sweet scent rose from the dress. I could hear the light rain outside pattering against the dirty window over the washer. Beneath my bare legs, the rug under the spread out dress felt rough and scratchy, but the fabric of the dress was cool and soft. My legs ached from their unusual position. This is wonderful, I thought, and for a long, delicious moment, my head tilted back, my eyes closed. I immersed myself in the absolute joy of it. Then, amidst the silkiness of the dress, amidst the sweet fragrances, perfume, and laundry soap, there arose a dangerous, utterly forbidden thought. Maybe I am a girl. Becomings come in many varieties. They can be planned or unplanned, a natural progression or abrupt. We go to grade school, high school, college, we plan a career. We become teachers or doctors, plumbers or geologists, or there is an accident, an illness, and suddenly we become patients or victims. Our path of becoming one thing is suddenly altered, and we must adapt. Becomings also come with expectations. Our family expects us to grow up, have our own family, a career. Our culture expects us to be productive and pay taxes, and perhaps, at least in that time, even go to war. But what happens when those expectations are at odds with who we are? What do we do? What can we do? Knowing that if we defy them, the resulting backlash could be fatal.
As we pause now in Erika's story, I want to invite us into a time of meditation. Let's just take a few moments to settle ourselves and get comfortable and begin to shift into a more inward space. Close your eyes if that feels comfortable and allow your breathing to become more deep and full. As you do this, begin to think back. Has there ever been a time when you didn't fit in? When those around you expected you to be different than you were? when you felt you had to hide who you truly were from others or even from yourself. Or maybe for you, it wasn't even an option to hide the ways you didn't fit in. One way or another, not fitting in is a common human experience. If you've ever felt this way, it joins you with all of humanity. Who you were may have been blatantly outside of the dominant culture, or maybe it wasn't as dramatic. Maybe you were the new kid in a snobby school, or an athlete born into a bookish family. Think about one way that you experience not fitting in. And if you feel so inclined, I invite you to type one sentence or less into the chat, just naming one way you experience not fitting in. Whether you decide to share or not, I'll be reading aloud what people type in, so you can feel free to just keep your eyes closed and listen if you like. Choosing not to have children. I failed as a female. Always the new one at school. Not the same religion as most of the population I lived in. Child of divorce who felt outside my mother's new family. Unwelcome in my own family. Too tall for a girl. Choosing not to have children in the 1950s. Never seemed to meet parents' expectations. Being an obese teen, being treated like a leper by my peers. Female in a male profession. Female athlete in a time when that wasn't appreciated. I wondered if after 6 out of 9 years of living in Japan, I was part Japanese. Noticing how much better I would fit in with my interests and abilities if I were a boy. Too skinny. I'm going to stop there, but of course, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Now we're going to have a little musical interlude leading us into the next part of Erika's story.
Thanks, Andrea. Since we last spoke, I have graduated high school. Along the way, my mother, in her wisdom, signed me up in the Navy in 1965 at age 17. I served in Vietnam aboard an aircraft carrier rather than as a draftee and a walking target in the Vietnamese jungle. When I returned, I met a girl named Barbara, fell in love, and we married in 1970. I went to college, eventually getting my master's degree in exploration geology. Through all of those becomings, high school graduate, sailor, husband, college student, parallel to all of those pathways toward being what I was supposed to be, I had also become a closeted crossdresser. In that part of my life, I was ever more convinced of my worthlessness, my duplicity, and my utter irredeemable perversion. I began my career in exploration in 1979. I also began a cycle in my field work. When I was out working alone, I finished each day and picked up food on the way back to the motel. I ate my dinner in front of the television, planned the next day's traverses, all while working my way deep into a bottle of brandy. I often paid the price the next morning, but this pattern continued for years. So it was in midsummer of 1989, I found myself working alone in the desert of southwestern Utah, mapping and sampling in search of deposits of gold and silver. My head was pounding as I trudged over the dusty desert under the glare of a yellow bright morning sun. Drunk again last night, I had pulled out my case with its collection of women's things and dressed and drank. Why the hell can't I stop this? I asked myself. I sure deserve the hangover this time. Hiking along, I came to yet another dense stand of pinyon. Turning sideways, I pushed my way through the tree branches, easing my way. Suddenly, my right foot slipped into nothingness. I grabbed at the branches. Pulling my foot back, I forced them aside to see where I had stepped. It wasn't a hole I had stepped in. It was the edge of a cliff. I had arrived at the creek. The sides were not sloped as I had expected, but near vertical walls, perhaps 100 feet high. At the bottom of the cliff were many large boulders of black basalt that had broken from the cliff under my feet. Beneath them, the floor of the gorge revealed light-colored rhyolite. I considered the situation. Okay, I can't get down there. It's too steep. It'd be dangerous if I tried to make my way down. I'm not here to practice my rock climbing skills, especially not alone. Suddenly, exploding into my brain, it came to me. Here was my chance. No one need ever know what a worthless person you are, whispered the acid voice in my head. Right here, right now. You could end it all, make it go away. Just make it look like an accident. Make it look like you decided to climb down the cliff on your own and fell, or like you were cutting through the trees and didn't see the edge. They won't find you for days. So you'd better do it right. Don't want to lie there with a broken back, dying slow. Hit head first. Make it quick. Don't linger in pain. Here's your chance. This time it's for real. Here it is. Do it now. Motionless in the desert heat, I balanced on the edge of the cliff. Just a twitch, a brief, sudden impulse, the voice persisted. Drop your rock hammer over by that chunk of basalt. The search party will find it, as if you lost it when you fell. Scrape your foot along the rocks, so they will think you scrambled for footing. Barb will get the insurance, and no one will find out about you. The turpentine fragrance of the pinyon trees around me wafted through the heated desert air, mixed with the gritty smell of hot sand and rocks beneath my feet. Sweat trickled down my back under my pack. I could hear the faint sounds of insects hopping and buzzing, and crawling in their blind, incessant way. I lifted my head to look skyward through sticky eyes, swollen from crying. Why, I silently asked for the millionth time, why am I this way? But the cloudless blue void above me had nothing to say on the matter. The rocks at my feet, too, were silent, their view of things focused on millennia, not moments, certainly not on mere human concerns. I stood for it seemed an eternity. Then, slowly, I backed out of the tree branches, turned, and walked to a boulder. I took off my pack and sat down. I didn't want to die. Sometimes becomings collide. You find yourself caught between the expectations of others as you strive to fulfill their hopes and dreams. Yours, however, must be ignored or suppressed into this tight, ragged lump that lives at the base of your throat. But that doesn't work, because within that miserable lump lies the truth, the sometimes unbearable, burning truth of who we are. Yet doggedly we plod on, suffering in silence, until we can't. On March 1st, 1997, I came out to my wife, Barb. She asked me to move out of the house while she thought things over. I told my mother in August of 1998. She had had a stroke, so was paralyzed and could barely speak. But she took her good right hand and grabbed her left and slapped my leg with it, saying over and over again, "Thank you." In November of 2001, Barb asked me to move back home, saying we could live as sisters. At the end of the phone call, I said to her, "I love you, Barb." She replied, "I love you too, Erika." In saying that, she showed her tortured husband the real meaning of unconditional love. I began attending a local support group for trans people, At the end of our meetings, we would often go to a local restaurant for dinner and drinks. It was a touch of normalcy in our lives, but it came with risks. So, shall we go to Poppy's again? I'll drive if you like, I said. Everyone agreed, and we filed out of the meeting room and down the stairs to the street. Tuesday evenings in downtown Bellingham were quiet, and this night was no exception. There were just enough people around to let us practice not getting clocked, that is, being identified as cross-dressers, but not enough to intimidate us into hiding ourselves. We were all learning, building our courage day by day. As we approached the car, I pulled the keys out of my purse and pressed the button to open the doors. Nothing happened. I pressed again and again, no response. By the time we got to the car, I realized that the little battery in the key fob must be dead. Girls, I'm sorry, but the door opener seems to be dead. Well, now what do we do? Was the reply. Well, I can still open the door with the regular key. Thing is, that sets off the alarm. The car honks and the lights flash. We'll find ourselves the center of attention and someone might call the cops. Oh no, we don't want that. Any other ideas? Yes, there might be a way. I don't know if the back doors of the trunk are hooked into the alarm. We could take a chance with the trunk because the back seat has a center console door. If we get a wire hanger, I could crawl into the trunk, push open that little door, and snag a back door latch to open it. If we're lucky, it won't set off the alarm. Well, okay, if that's the only way. A few minutes later, we were ready. Okay, stand around the back of the car like you're just talking. I'll open the trunk with the key. They gathered around. I inserted the key. The trunk opened with its usual thunk, but no alarm. All right, next step. Looking around furtively, I pulled up my skirt. A nice brown denim number with a flare just a bit, giving me the illusion of a waistline, and crawled into the trunk, squirming my way forward to the console door. It opened easily. One of the girls handed me the wire hanger, already straightened out, but leaving a hook at one end. I put it through the opening, extending my arm into the back seat. I put my head down against the opening and found that I could just see the rear door latch with one eye. Wiggling and stretching, I got the loop around the latch. Okay, here goes. It was surprising how loud the horn was. As I lay in the trunk, skirt bunched up around my thighs, a gaggle of cross-dressed men at my feet, I suddenly saw our predicament from an observer's perspective. I began to laugh, even as I scrambled to get out of the trunk. I hit my head in desperation to climb out, pulling my wig down over one eye. I emerged, red-faced, laughing to tears into the blare of horns and the flash of lights. I ran around to the driver's side door. I opened it with the key and inserted it into the ignition. The honking and flashing immediately stopped. In the sudden silence, I looked up from the seat. Girls, I said, I think the first round is on me tonight. So it went as I tested myself ever further, ever more publicly. I dressed on Sundays and drove to Mount Vernon to walk the mall. I picked up our mail in a dress. I came out at work. In one session during my early transition, my psychologist suggested a church in Bellingham that was accepting. So one Sunday, I snuck into the back row after the service had started. Terrifyingly, people actually said hello and welcome to me with smiles on their faces after the service. Go figure. Finally, in October 2002, I flew to Montreal for gender reassignment surgery. Awareness came slowly as I emerged from a soft, dreamless place. I was lying on my back, looking up at an acoustical tile ceiling. Back in the room, I thought dreamily. Okay, that means it's done. Do I feel any different? The only thing I feel right now is pain. Pain in my crotch and my bloated gut and pain on my chest. Chest. That must be my boobs. I raised my right arm and felt the IV line restricted, so I moved my left, bringing it to my chest. I felt nothing but a mass of gauze bandages and tape, hot and uncomfortable. But I knew the pain meant I had breasts. My breasts, my boobs, I marveled. My girls, mine. What about below? Extending my arm, I found that too was a great wad of gauze and tape that extended all the way down and, as I began to realize, up inside me. I was packed up, tight, top and bottom. It meant I no longer had a penis. I had a vagina. The realization enveloped me, folding itself around me. It was a validation of identity profound beyond my greatest expectations. I had breasts, I had a vagina. I was now female. I felt an all-encompassing warmth at the thought, a warmth that flooded through me, reaching every corner of my being. The twisted pain I had endured all of my life was gone, replaced by a feeling of connection, by an awareness of congruence I had not anticipated. I was whole. Barb took care of me during my long recovery. The recovery was not just physical, of course. It was our relationship that also had to become something different. But it was a relationship built on the truth. And it was stronger and more beautiful because of it. So, what did I learn? What wise and pithy words do I offer after dragging you through this tale of woe? Saying just be true to yourself is, pretty trite. Yet, I learned that in each of us, there is this tiny kernel, this warm, glowing thing that is the true us, and that we must honor it. But I learned also that we cannot honor it alone. That lesson comes from my mother, who said thank you from the depths of her stroke. I learned it from my Barb when she said she loved me, Erika. And I learned it from a crazy collection of compassionate, loving friends that are part of the congregation of the Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship. So finally, I offer this. Treat your true self with respect. Nurture it, take good care of it, and share it with the people you love and love you. I am sure it will become something wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Erika, for so generously sharing your story. I have to say that for me, it's delightful to hear that you got word that our fellowship would be a welcoming place for you to find a home here in the Shangri-La of Bellingham. And I had the privilege of being at your very first BUF Women's Retreat many years ago, which made that retreat so much fun. Such a celebration. Okay, now I have to stop crying. So each month, as one way of walking our talk, we take a collection for an organization whose work is in sync with our Unitarian Universalist principles. Today, your generous contributions will go to Northwest Youth Services. After Gabby Rigby tells us about the important work that Northwest Youth Services does here in our community, you'll see a slide showing you how to make your contribution on our website or on the Give Plus phone app. If you prefer to mail a check, make it out to BUF and write Northwest Youth Services or Special Collection in the memo line. Your gifts today will make a difference in the lives of homeless youth, so please give generously. Thank you, and welcome, Gabby.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you all so much for inviting me to be here today. My name is Gabby Rigby, and I use he, him, his pronouns. I work for Northwest Youth Services. It's really an honor to be speaking after those incredible reflections. Thank you so much, Erika. I'm very excited to talk to you all a little bit about the work that we do. As an agency, we work with youth 13 to 24 years old in Skagit and Island counties, as well as Whatcom County. Our agency aims to support youth who are at risk of or are currently experiencing homelessness by identifying their goals and helping them to build the skills necessary to reach stability. Through a variety of programs, we're able to offer support in accessing education and achieving employment goals, housing, LGBTQ specific services, and connections to mental health providers and other resources. The PAD program is our teen shelter, and we're located in downtown Bellingham, Washington. We provide a home to young people who are 13 to 17 and experiencing homelessness. Our youth often come to us because they've been kicked out of their home or because there's a lack of available placements in the foster care system. At any given time, over a quarter of the youth in our program identify as transgender. So this is a very timely service to be speaking about our program as well. And while there's no singular story of youth that come into our program, many youth arrive at the PAD with only a backpack of clothes and supplies and struggle to name a supportive adult in their life. There's often a lot that needs to be addressed really quickly when youth first arrive in terms of getting basic supplies, clothes that they need to get through the next week, school enrollment, and figuring out their medical care and well-being in general. I've been really lucky to work in the PAD program for over a year now. What makes me most grateful to work with our youth is how courageous, strong, and powerful they are. Our youth spend their time at our program getting back on track with school, addressing their basic needs, and working towards permanent housing, all while still just being a teenager and making friends, learning new things, growing, and trying out all kinds of different opportunities. While our youth are settling in, we work with them to engage their individual interests and strengths and build independent living skills. It's really important to us that we create community in our space and encourage youth to engage in their passions. On any given afternoon in the PAD, you might find a resume workshop, karaoke competition, spa night, arts and crafts, homework time, baking, a jam sesh, board games, or one of my personal favorites, youth talent shows. I can't describe how happy it makes me to come out of my office and get to watch some youth perform their amazing talents. Our teens are always exciting and interesting, and there's always a lot going on. We're really grateful to get to connect with our community partners to bring joy and fun outings to our youth that are in a time that can be really tenuous and uncertain. Our youth are frequently out on hikes, at the parks, at the Cat Cafe, which is a current favorite, at Trampoline Zone, and swimming and climbing at the YMCA. It's always so incredible to see young people finding the things that they love and that keep them going, being able to encourage the opportunities they have to connect with the community and other supportive adults as well. My personal favorite thing that we get to do at the PAD is encouraging and celebrating each youth for who they are. Often our youth come to us from homes in which their identities were shunned or not allowed to be expressed at all. And getting to provide a space for youth that we just celebrate them and who they're presenting as and who they are is so incredible, watching youth fill up with that love. So I'm really grateful to get to share a little bit about our program. And if you've got any questions or would like to connect about our program, I would love to hear from you and be able to answer your questions. There's gonna be a breakout room available if you'd like to ask me any questions during the coffee hour, and you're always welcome to send me an email at that email address on the screen there. It's gabbyr@nwys.org. And I want to thank you all so much again for having me and being a part of this amazing community and considering how we can support and give more love to the PAD and the young people that we are able to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. Thanks for the awesome work you're doing. Why don't we sing together? We're gonna sing Everything Possible. It's in your teal hymnal if you have one, number 1019. We've cleared off the table, leftovers saved, washed the dishes and put them away. I've told you a story, tucked you in tight at the end of your knockabout day. As the moon sets its sail to carry you to sleep over the midnight sea, I will sing you a song no one sang to me. May it keep you good company. Oh, you can be anybody you wanna be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country where your heart leads, and know that I will love you still. You can live by yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose one special one, and the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done. There are girls who grow up strong and bold. There are boys quiet will be the love you leave behind when you're done.
Thank you, Andrea. And thank you all for being here today. We do have some announcements. Next Sunday at noon on this Zoom link, we'll have a congregational dialogue about policies for reopening post-COVID. The BUF COVID Task Force will share a bit about decisions that have already been made and take questions, but mostly this will be a chance for all of us to hear one another's perspectives and ideas about how we should proceed on matters of ongoing safety and vaccination policies. In advance of this meeting, please read the COVID Task Force's frequently asked questions document, which is with today's order of service. Every week, a link to the order of service will be in the green box at the top of BUF.org. And if you'd like to know more about activities and opportunities to connect at BUF, go to our website, BUF.org, where you can sign up for our weekly newsletter, the midweek update. Also at BUF.org, scroll to the bottom of today's order of service to find our current announcements. One more announcement. Today, after the closing song, Circle Around for Freedom, it'll be a little different than our usual coffee hour breakout sessions. You'll get a little notice at the bottom of your screen inviting you to join the breakout sessions. And if you click on that, you'll get a choice of 3 options. And they're all really good, so it might be a hard choice. So one of the options is to join Erika for a question and answer session. One is to join Gabby for a question and answer session about Northwest Services, youth services. And the third is just regular coffee hour visiting. And they'll last for 10 minutes. And then we'll do the usual thing of anyone who wants to stay longer than that will get reshuffled into different groups for regular visiting. So just click on that little announcement to join groups and then make your choice, and you'll be hopefully taken to the right room. Now, this morning and this month, we've been focusing on the process of becoming. And becoming is brave work, which requires a willingness to let go and a willingness to take risks. It is a lifetime practice, and may we commit to it fully as individuals and as a fellowship. Now, as we come to the end of our service this morning, we extinguish our chalice, but not the spirit that we've kindled here today. We carry that with us until we're together again. Now, please join in our closing song, Circle Round for Freedom.
Muted, Carrie.
Well, I think now is when we're supposed to be invited to go to breakout rooms. Is it working?
There is a little breakout rooms button at the bottom of your
Oh,
screen.
Oh, I see.
oh, okay.
Cool.
Oh,
And then you choose.
talk with Erika.
I do not see that. I don't see anything that says join a breakout room.
It's
I
a
don't
little-
see it. I don't see it either.
Looks like a window.
Type,
Down to-
tap once on your screen, that might help, might show the buttons.
I see it, but I don't see how to join it.
Oh, it's 4 little squares,
Up
breakout.
at the top on Apple,
Well, so click,
top left-hand corner on Apple.
Oh,
No, that won't do anything.
no, that doesn't get me anything either.
Yeah, I can see talk with Erika and who's in there, but how did you get in there?
there's
I
a,
touched it,
I touched it too. That didn't get me in.
and then I did,
Click on join. Talk to Erika
Oh,
Shepard.
there it is. I see it now.
I think
Where
it
is
just
it?
showed up.
Where is
I don't-
join? I don't see that.
Break us out, I think we'll get.
Next to the name of the breakout room, there should be a little blue button that says join.
There's an arrow. Oh, if you go over to the right, it does become join.
What? This sucks.